probably going to be the display swatch. And if you notice here, I say custom visibility because that's what a lot of people are going to use this for. Okay. So in this demo, I have this little box that currently displays your current web browser size. Okay. And as you see here, there's a bunch of inline blocks. Now, as you know, these are actually containers. And by default, a container will take up the entire width of the page. However, that is something called display block. Okay. We're getting into CSS terms. Okay. And so a block tells an element to go full width, to expand as far out as you can. Okay. Now, with the display swatch, we can actually change that behavior. So in this example, all of these little blocks in this grid are using something called an inline block. Okay. And an inline block just says take up as much space as you need, and then the next thing will just come right after it, right? So as you see, when I resize this browser window, the blocks kind of flow, onto new lines as it grows. Okay. And then these orange blocks will hide and show based upon the browser size. So this particular one is hide. It'll hide from 0 to 600 pixels. This one will hide at 650 to 925 pixels. And if you play around with this, if you just kind of resize the browser, so let's resize it to like here. We're now at 860, which was less than 925. You see that we see a new one that says hide at 1003 pixels plus. And the reason I did these odd numbers is to show you that you can do a custom size, right? It's not just, the default visibility stack inside Foundation 6 allows you to, hide based on small, medium, large, but this now allows you to show and hide content based on a custom breakpoint, okay? So a custom size of the browser window. So really cool. That I know a lot of people are going to use that for custom visibility. It was a very sought after feature. So there we go. Now we have that. Okay. Display. If you're really interested on how I did this little pixel box thing, all the code's right here. It's just this little code in the JavaScript stack. That's the JavaScript code just to that populates this little header with the content. Yeah, pretty simple stuff. It's some relatively simple JavaScript. And just says whenever we resize or the page loads, essentially get the current browser size, and then replace the contents with the current browser size. So, cool. If you ever want to figure out, not sure why you would want that on your particular website, but there you go. Okay. So if you look here, in this example, I have a bunch of container stacks. And as we talked before, normally a container will go the full width of whatever you're within, right? So a container will always try to grow as far as it can. But this display swatch, if you look here, I created a swatch, called it class inline block. Then I can set the display property. If you notice here, there's a lot of different values. I'm not going to review all of these values. If you'd like to know what some of them are and what some of them do, feel free to research the CSS documentation to learn about all of these. I will be talking about two things today. We'll be talking about inline block or inline. Inline block and inline are very similar. Most of the time you're going to want to use inline block, okay? And then we're going to be talking about none, which is how we can do some custom visibility. So here I created a class called inline block, and I set that to be display inline block, surprisingly, right? And I added that to each of these containers. So every single one of these containers has the inline block class. And what that does is it makes the container basically sized to the width of its content. So if you see these orange blocks are a little bit wider, This one's actually more narrow than this one, is because it will shrink down to the size of its content, and then what all the content that's within it will just kind of start piling on top of each other, or not on top, but next to each other. Okay, so this is definitely a valid layout, and actually, it works very similar to buttons. I don't know if you've noticed with buttons, but if you have two button stacks directly on top of each other, they will actually be next to each other in preview. They won't be on top of each other. And that's because buttons by default are inline. They're not display block. Okay. So that's pretty simple, right? How to get the inline block. So that's what we can do if you want something like that. Next, now let's look at how we can use some of this display none. Okay. So if you see here, I have 3 different display swatches that hide based on different breakpoints. So for this one, I have a class called hide small, and I set that to be display none. And then it displays none at a custom breakpoint. So you click on the custom breakpoint and you set that to be 0 to 600. So from 0 to 600, whatever I add this class to will be hidden. Right? And I apply this little force button just to use the hammer. Put the hammer down on it. Force that style. Okay? Next up, we have hide 650, which sets to display none. Custom breakpoint from 650 to 925. So as you see here, you can define the exact breakpoint from a small side to a larger side. So this gives you very granular control. Next up, I have hide 1003. And essentially, I just wanted it from hide from basically 1003 pixels above. So what I did is I just set the minimum to be 1003, and then I just set the maximum to be 10,000. I mean, I don't know anyone that's going to have a browser 10,000 pixels wide. So I just set it to, so essentially this is effectively, going from 1,000 pixels or 1,003 pixels up. Okay. And then all I did is I added those classes to these orange containers with the proper labels so that you can see inside the demo what those are actually doing. And it does its job, as we saw earlier. Right? Pretty cool.